We're continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, the halachot of Kriyat Torah, Siman Kuf Lamed Zayin, and we're up to Sif Gimel, regular Dapei Mishna Berura, Daf Yutet Amud Bet, and the halacha comes really from Hakaod Maimoniot, brought in Maran Bet Yosef, Im Didek Pasuk Echad Velo Kirao. Imagine if the Baal Koreh skipped the Pasuk. Skipped the Pasuk, didn't read it. What happens? And now he passed that Pasuk. Imu b'mincha b'Shabbat, or b'Sheni v'Hamishi, if it's a Monday, Thursday, or it's Shabbat afternoon, and he already read 10 psukim. We mentioned the previous saif that the minimum of Kriyat Torah is 10 psukim, minimum of every aliyah is 3. So if he has done already that, he's done the Chovat Hayom, and it's not Shabbat and Yom Tov, it's one of the regular Monday, Thursday, Shabbat afternoon days, says the Shulchan Aruch, Eno chozer. You don't go back. You just let it pass. Ve'im lav chozer. But if not, if any of those conditions are missing, if it's on Shabbat, you have to complete the whole Chumash. Right? And that happens on Shabbat. So then you have to go out. Or if you had 10 psukim altogether, and now that you missed this one, you only read 9 psukim out of 10 that you were supposed to read, then also you go back. Ve'im lav chozer, aval b'Shabbat, on Shabbat, afilu dilek pasuk echad chozer v'korem. Even if you missed only one pasuk in the longest parasha of the year, still you have to go back. Ve'afilu achal shehazir et Torah, even if you return the Torah to the Aron already, and someone got up and said, "Oh, I forgot to say you missed the pasuk," right? Gotta go back. Gotta go back. You know, in Ari Shiva many years ago, before my time, but this became a famous story. Leil Purim, the night of Purim, they had a fantastic chazan for the Kriyat Megillah that read every year, and it was a whole production. And then afterwards, everyone escorts to Rosh Hashiva to dining room. It was a massive feast and party until it goes wee hours of the night, past midnight. And one of the Bachurim, right after the Kriyat Megillah, came and said to one of the Rebbeim, he said, "I think he missed a word. Missed a word, skipped a word." And he believed him. So he was pretty confident that the mistake was done. So he went and found someone that had tape recorded the reading, and he sat and listened to it, and sure enough, the word was mistakenly said or missed. And he went with the recording to the Rosh Hashiva. And Rosh Hashiva said, "We got to wake up everyone from the dormitory, and whoever is still in the dining room dancing, get everyone back to the Bet Midrash." They had like a midnight past midnight, maybe even reading of Megillah. So again, even if it's done already, you put the Sefer Torah back in, and say one pasuk was skipped, you have to go back and read it.
I'm sorry, is it the beginning of the parasha or
the whole parasha? Anywhere in the parasha. If you missed, you have to go back. ואפילו אחר שהחסיר את התורה ואמר קדיש, חוזר וקורא, הוא שניים עמו. אפילו הפטיר והתפלל מוסף, חוזר וקורא. Even if you already did haftarah, you daven musaf, doesn't make a difference. You have to go back and read it and complete the pasuk that you missed. Now, how about Moadim, Parashat Moadim? Is that like Shabbat? Or is that like Sheni v'Chamishi? It's not really part of finishing the cycle of the Torah. So it says, Shulchan Aruch, Parashat Moadim, Dinam k'mo mincha b'Shabbat, v'Sheni v'Chamishi, that the halacha would follow the halachot of Shabbat afternoon and Sheni v'Chamishi, since it's not part of the cycle. Each one of those parashiyot have been read already in the cycle. You're finishing a cycle of Kriyat Torah, and that is sufficient. That is good enough. Says the Mishnah Berura. Of course, every person has to have had 3 psukim. In other words, even if you did 10 psukim subtotal on Shni v'Chamishi, we're talking about on Monday, Thursday, Shabbat afternoon, and you did 20 psukim, But the Shlishi, that was only 3 psukim, you skipped one. Still have to go back. Meaning you have to have the minimum of the subtotal Kriyat Torah, and you have to have the minimum of every person as well. And otherwise, if you had all of those criteria, you don't have to go back. Eno chozer, da'akara asara psukim k'takarat chachamim. If you did the basic thing, the fact that you missed the pasuk is not the end of the world, because we're not trying to finish the Chumash. We're just trying to have a proper Kriyat Torah, and that you already had. Now, even pasuk echad, we said you go back on Shabbat. Va'afilu miktzat pasuk echad. Says the Mishnah Berura, it's not just one pasuk. How about if you missed just one word? Says the Mishnah Berura, even afilu teva achat sarich lachzor velikroto. Even one word, you have to go back and you have to read it again. Now, if you read by mistake a pasuk from a different parasha, doesn't belong, right? For instance, imagine parashiot that are usually together, and now this year has to be separate. It's not shnei parashiot. It's not a double parasha. And you start reading into the second parasha. Then what? You made a mistake. You did more than you were supposed to. You read it. You read Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor from a mistaken paragraph, right? And then you went back. In other words, you had Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor in a different parasha. You read that, and then they told you, you started the second pasuk. They said, "Oh, this is the wrong parasha," but the first pasuk was the same thing. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. So you skipped that from the second parasha. You said the words from a wrong place, and now you want to catch from the second pasuk of the right place and go on. You with me? Right? What happens? What do you think? Huh? Go back? Don't go back. This is amazing Jewish community. Immediately you have a machloket. Right? What do you think?
You said the word, so you don't go back.
He said the right words. So this Chacham Obadiah says it's like dileg pasuk. You didn't read it from the right place. He's talking about one of the parashut was Tuma, one of them was Tucha, a little more complicated. But says Chacham Obadiah, it's equivalent of not having read the pasuk. You got to go back and read the pasuk properly from the proper place. If it's a parasha Ptucha, it has to be Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor from parasha Ptucha, not from parasha Stumas. Therefore, that also is important. These things, by the way, happen. You have similarities in parashiyot. Sometimes by Hagbah they show the wrong place. The poor Baal Koreh starts reading, and everyone yells at him. And so I said, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. What's the big deal? Ma yesh. Go from the second pasuk. You have to go back from the proper pasuk. Now, we're going to actually talk later on in Siman Kuf Mem Bet. What happens if you missed one ot? You missed the vav. It happens all the time, right? Balkor is reading quick, and especially their psukim in the Chumash that are very similar to each other. So his brain is used to saying it one way, which is a different pasuk, a different place, and he said it without a vav, something like that. We're going to discuss that as well. It gets more interesting as the simanim develop. Now, if you have a lot of noise, this on Purim, of course, becomes a big deal in the young communities with a lot of kids, a lot of noise by Hamans and so on. But imagine by Kriyat Torah, you had a loud rash all of a sudden, a table dropped, something made a bang as he's reading the Chumash, and people did not hear one of the psukim or half of the pasuk. He read it, but no one really could hear because of the thunder that came or whatever that caused them not to be able to hear properly. So Rabbi Chadiyahu says the minhag is to be mekel and just go on because it was read in the pasuk in the tzibur rather properly. You don't have to necessarily go back to the pasuk beforehand, But again, there are those who try to be mahmir, go back, mikar adin. There's enough room to be mikil. So says the Mishna Berura, if you skip the pasuk, you go back to read it again. Even if you had already 7 aliyot, proper aliyot, without this pasuk, it's not a matter of how many aliyot you had. It's a matter of you have to finish the whole chumash. It's a cycle. So therefore, even in those cases, you go back still, and you read the proper reading, right? Kaf HaChaim writes that because on Shabbat is mutar to give hosafa of aliyot musifim, and Yom Tov is much more complicated. On Shabbat is mutar to give musifs. So it says that you don't have to go back once you had 7 aliyot on Shabbat and you're giving musifin. You don't have to go back to this pasuk, but you could take another person and give another aliyah. You don't have to catch the okay, it was in Shavi'i, the mistake was in Mashlim, was in Shishi. Bring the same guy out and give him aliyah. You could give aliyah, you don't have to just read it. You could create another aliyah for it. No problem. And Yom Tov would be much more difficult, because in Yom Tov we try to stay to the number of 5 or 6 on Yom Kippur. But on Shabbat it's more lenient to give Mosifim when need be, so therefore it says you could make a Mosif out of this and read it again, go back to that pasuk. And what happens now if you have covered your cycle? In other words, we are saying that the whole problem over here is because you missed the pasuk from the cycle. How about if it's the mistake happened, you skipped the pasuk in Aliyah Rishona? What's the difference? The difference is Aliyah Rishona, you already read it 3 times in the Tzibur. You read it previous Shabbat afternoon, you read it again on Monday, you read it again on Thursday. So don't sweat the fact that you missed the pasuk. You already said it in the Tzibur. So your cycle, all in all, is completed. It shouldn't be really necessarily a big deal. Now, so Kaf HaChaim says, because of this, you don't have to go back. Aliyah Rishona, because you already finished your cycle on the days prior, from Shabbat afternoon, Monday, Thursday, you don't have to go back and do it again. How about is more mahmir over here in Kaf HaChaim? Believe it or not, he says you should go back and say it without bracha. You should say that still and not skip it. And if you skipped on the psukim that you're going to read in future, in the time of Moadim, in other words, you skip the pasuk in the parasha, but let's say it was Parashat Amalek. So Purim morning you're going to read Parashat Amalek. So yes, right now you missed it, but you know that this is going to be read in one of the occasions throughout the year before the end of the year. So your cycle is going to be completed in that way. Of course, this, according to Kaf HaChaim, would be a question. And Kaf HaChaim says that this does not equal the same thing. It's the chovah of this week you didn't do, so therefore you have to go back still and read it. And also, you don't know if you're going to be medaleg later on. It says you can't count on future. If you already read it Monday, Thursday prior, so now on Shabbat you skip, fine, because you already have done it. But to rely that later on, a few months I'm going to read it, maybe you're going to skip it then too. So therefore, it says you cannot, on the cheshbon of future, you cannot be mekel right now, and hence it's important to go back and to do it again. Says the Kaf HaChaim. Let's just do one more piece over here. That even the Shulchan Aruch said, even if you already said Kaddish and you said Musaf, you still go back and you read it. Says the Mishnah Berura, Niresh Tafka im hadiluk haya ba'aliyot harishonot. That's only if the skipping was in one of the first aliyot. Avol im hadiluk haya ba'aliyat shvi'it, if the skipping of a pasuk was in the last aliyah, in Mashlim, then ein tzarech lachzor ulvarech. You don't have to go back and say another bracha because of the pasuk that was skipped. Anyways, the maftir is going to go up, right? Maftir is going to go up. So you just have maftir, go back to that pasuk and continue. You don't have to do anything special. So seamlessly, you could just have maftir start a little bit earlier, and you'll be good to go. That's off a parasha. וגדולה מזו איתה כמל בסימן רשב עין שם וברורה לך. So it says, the Mishna Berura, you don't have to always go back. That's only if original aliyot, the earlier ons, but if you have in one of the last aliyot, you just have the maftir start from those psukim and go on. Now, how about if the maftir already started the brachot of haftarah? The maftir already started saying the brachot of haftarah, finished the reading of the Torah, started haftarah. And then people remember that he has skipped the pasuk. The Kaf HaChaim writes that you should not stop in order that your bracha should not be a bracha al-batara. You already started the bracha. You should say the brachot, you finish the brachot of haftarah, and finish the haftarah, and finish the brachot afterwards, and then you go back to the pasuk that you skipped with two other pasukim. You do a kriya of 3 pasukim, because you can't do just one pasuk. You do that pasuk and 2 pasukim afterwards, and that is better than stopping the haftarah in the middle, in mid kriya, because what's going to happen with the brachot?
With or without a bracha?
Without the bracha. You don't have to necessarily make a bracha of it. Again, you had 7 aliyot already. And if they already went to their homes, people went home, and then somebody figured out what happened, right? And afterwards they remembered that they skipped the pasuk. In Shelot Utshuvot Yosef Ometz, he writes, in this case, you don't have to go back to read it. You have to schlep people back out of their house to go back to read it. And at the same time, Kafran HaKohen, in Shoel V'Nish'al, in Shelot Utshuvot Shoel V'Nish'al, I think he was a Rav from Tunisia, he writes that in next Shabbat, when you bring out the Sefer Torah, right, then you want to go, one person goes up to the Torah and says the bracha without Shom Malchut and reads from the pasuk that was skipped, and 2 psukim afterwards, and this is Aliyah without Shom Malchut, and then you start the Aliyot of the parasha. But Chacham Ovadia seems to have said this is people bringing in the name of Chacham Ovadia, and it's not necessarily in his own writings, that Chacham Ovadia felt that in next Shabbat the Kohen should go back from the pasuk that was skipped and continue until the end of the parasha and the first aliyah of the current parasha. That's what should be done in Parashat HaShavua Haba'ah, if people already went home. In that case, that it's the best way of action, and that's in somebody who always Talmidim put out a series of Sfarim Me'en Omer, the questions that he discussed with Chacham Ovadia. People have different feelings about how authentic and reliable it is, but nevertheless, many of these are personal conversations that he had, and he brings in the name of Chacham Ovadia in Chelek Aref, Perek Zayin, that Chacham Ovadia felt the best would be for the Kohen next week to go back to the pasuk that was dismissed and go from there, Keseder, until the parasha, B'ezrat Hashem, will continue this in the days to come.